you were there a year ago in Boston when, they were up in those finals and they were looking like they were on their way to winning a title and finally solving, or not solving, but like maximizing the Brown and Tatum era.
Winning a
You
title.
know,
I mean, they were going to win a title. Should have won a
right,
title.
right. And now, so here Jaylen Brown is on the verge of a possible free agency type decisions, awaiting to see if he gets a supermax extension from the Celtics. Years long rumblings about whether or not he wants to continue in Boston, and the idea that maybe if they did not win the whole thing, that he would be ready to go be his own man somewhere else. That has been the consistent intel when it comes to Jaylen. I don't think this is it for him in Boston, because I think he probably does get that super max that keeps him around. But my goodness, you talk about a tough finale. 8 of 23 from the field, 1 of 9 from three, 19 points, minus 17, 8 boards, 5 assists. Tatum not much better, 5 of 13 overall. Combined, 2 of 13 from three between those two guys. Just a terrible, terrible finish for that tandem.
The Boston Garden is maybe the best playoff environment I've been in during those finals last year. I mean, it's right up there in like the pantheon of these like roaring buildings I think we've both been in, right? Oklahoma City, old school Oracle, San Antonio back in the day, Utah when it's at its fiercest, Memphis, a good playoff atmosphere. Boston, as loud, as raucous as you would think, tough to win a road game in as any. How many big road wins have been taken from them in the last few playoffs? People have the record out there, but I think they're like under 500 at home in like the last two
Yeah,
playoffs and
they're
really
around
good on the road.
500.
But
Yeah, it's the elimination game thing had been what had kept them afloat. That obviously didn't bear out today. But you're right, they haven't been great at home. And I do wonder, Vinny Goodwill, our friend and colleague from Yahoo Sports, had tweeted after the game. This kind of, I thought, resonated, that when the Celtics were down 3-0, we in the media had questions about Joe Mazzulla, because they fell in game 7. He said, we have questions about Jaylen Brown. And I do think from a spotlight standpoint, it is interesting, and it's probably not that binary, but it is interesting how it shifts. Joe, post game, he doesn't really, and he's young, I get it. He doesn't help himself with the optics of some of his media stuff. He was asked post game if they needed to be less reliant on threes, and gave a fairly terse no, as if that was an absurd, proposition. And he was obviously just frustrated, not in a great headspace to be breaking everything down. But when I guess when it comes to the old fashioned blame game, how do you see the breakdown for Boston?
yeah, I mean, I think that you saw it in the finals last year. Tatum and Brown are not crisp ball handlers. And I think Tatum in the last 3 games of the finals last year, all 3 losses, right? They're up 2-1. They lose the final 3. I think he had 15 turnovers combined in the last 3 games. He went 6 of 18 in the game 6. And he was kind of the GOAT. Like Jaylen Brown had a really good finals last year. Remember, like really tough for them to cover.
Oh
They had
yeah,
to like switch Draymond
yeah,
on to him. But even through that, I think part of the way that the Warriors beat the Celtics was really attacking the dribble and attacking with pressure Brown and Tatum, because those are their 2 lead scorers, lead playmakers, guys you want the ball in their hands, and they're sloppy. They turn the ball over a bunch. We see it a bunch with Tatum and Brown. What'd you say, 8 turnovers tonight? Like just kind of dribbling it away at key
yeah. No, I
moments.
didn't say it, but that's certainly worth mentioning. 8 turnovers, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
And by the way, super producer Andrew Schlecht adding in that they're Celtics 5-6 at home in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's almost made
Oh, six and
finals.
six,
So
6-6.
I'm not in the camp of like, oh, something is fatally wrong. You have to break up Tatum and Brown. I still kind of think they were the most talented roster. If they got through, I might have picked them against the Nuggets. Although it would have been really tough because they went 7, Nuggets are resting. But I think they're very well built, but I do think that one of their flaws is like a lack of like kind of the ball control point guard. Maybe this Malcolm Brogdon injury, if he doesn't have it, maybe they advance. I don't know. I thought that was a great trade in the offseason. And, he won 6th man of the year, so it kind of worked. He was just hurt at the wrong time. but I wouldn't like they have flaws in their game that maybe that means they don't ever win a title, but I don't think they're disqualified. Like we should think they can never win a title together because if Steph Curry doesn't go nuclear in game 4 last year and have this historic performance, they win the NBA championship last year. So I think they're right on the doorstep and like maybe make some tweaks around the edges, but I'd keep the core together.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And briefly to clean up those numbers from before that Andrew shared. So it was 5-6 this year, 6-6 last year. So, around 500 for the 2 years. And I think my only thing on the Celtics front that we've seen time and again is just the kind of the scar tissue that gets built up when it comes to falling short. And there's that fine line between, kind of going the old, the Michael Jordan Bulls and how they had to get through the Pistons and had to fight through, and then they eventually break through. That's a progression that we've seen with Boston. Jaylen has been there since 2016, I believe. Jayson the year after. That's when you just start looking at it and wondering if they want to remain together. And I'm curious because you do hear a lot of stuff about where Jaylen's head is at. So we'll see what happens with Boston.
Well, by the way, they both made All NBA this year. They're both super max eligible. I mean, that's particularly a conversation with Jaylen Brown, right? Just the expensiveness of
that's the thing, though. I mean, I know we can't get too caught up in one game, but if you're Wick Grousbeck and that ownership group, you sure wish that you weren't handing Jaylen Brown a supermax on the heels of an 8 turnover dud in Game 7 of the East Finals, and that's where I've talked to people within the league recently about the holistic question of is Jaylen Brown a supermax player, and you get differing opinions, and that's what we're going to have to wait and see how Boston sees.